Every story carries a whisper of the soul. Listening isn't enough. Feel it. This is Soul Stories. The early morning light filtered softly through the blinds of room 307, painting the walls in muted gold. Nurse Clara adjusted her white uniform and checked her patient's chart before stepping quietly inside. The room smelled faintly of antiseptic and lilies, flowers that had long since wilted in their vase but that she still replaced every Sunday, out of habit and hope. On the hospital bed lay Mr. Jonathan Reynolds, a man once known for his brilliance and fortune, a billionaire entrepreneur whose name had filled magazines and television screens. Now he was still as marble, his chest rising and falling only with the rhythm of the ventilator. 6 months had passed since the accident that had silenced his world. Clara moved gently like a whisper in motion. She had been his nurse since the first week he was admitted, long after the other nurses had rotated out of his care. Something about him, the calmness on his face, the faint curl of his lips, the sadness in the family's absence, made her stay. Every morning she began the same routine. She filled the basin with warm water, dipped the soft sponge in and bathed him slowly, as if he could feel the kindness behind every touch. "Good morning, Mr. Reynolds," she would say softly, her voice carrying warmth into the sterile room. "It's another bright day outside. The sky's blue, the kind you'd probably love to see again." She talked to him constantly, about the weather, about the nurse's gossip, about her little brother's mischievous adventures. She knew he couldn't hear her, or maybe he could. Some part of her wanted to believe that he was listening somewhere deep inside, trapped beneath the silence of his coma. Once during his sponge bath, she paused, noticing a faint tear track on his cheek. It must have been condensation, she told herself, just the air from the ventilator. But her heart skipped anyway. "You'll wake up one day," she whispered, brushing his hair away from his forehead, "and I'll be the first to say good morning." Her colleagues often teased her gently for her devotion. "Clara, he's not coming back," one nurse said. "Don't get attached," but Clara only smiled. "Hope is part of the treatment," she replied. As the monitors beeped steadily, she pulled up a chair beside him, reading aloud from his favorite novel, one his assistant had brought months ago. The sound of her voice filled the quiet, wrapping around him like sunlight. And though he lay unmoving somewhere deep within the stillness, Clara believed, just believed, that he could hear her. The hospital corridors were unusually quiet that evening. The hum of machines was softer, the footsteps fewer. Outside a storm gathered, rain tapping against the window like a heartbeat. Nurse Clara entered room 307 with her usual calmness, carrying a tray of fresh linens and a small bowl of warm water. "Good evening, Mr. Reynolds," she said gently, though she didn't expect an answer. "It's raining tonight. The kind of rain that makes the city lights look like tiny stars." She moved through her routine, checking his IV line, adjusting the blankets, and finally dipping the soft cloth into the warm water. The light in the room flickered as thunder rolled in the distance. She hummed quietly, the same melody she always did when she bathed him, a tune her mother used to sing when Clara was a child. As she wiped his hands, something stopped her. For a moment she thought she imagined it, a slight movement barely there. She froze, staring at his still face. Then it happened again. His fingers and his long, elegant fingers twitched beneath her touch. Her breath caught. "Mr. Reynolds?" she whispered. No response. She leaned closer, her heart pounding. The monitor beeped steadily, but his eyelids began to tremble. And then, slowly, unbelievably, his eyes fluttered open. They were hazel, the color of autumn leaves, dull at first but gradually sharpening with awareness. Clara felt tears sting her eyes. "Oh my God. You're awake?" she gasped, her voice trembling. His lips parted dry and cracked, and a faint, raspy voice escaped. "Who are you?" Clara's throat tightened. She pressed a hand to her chest, trying to steady herself. "I'm Clara," she said softly, smiling through her tears. "Your nurse. You're in St. Mary's Hospital. You've been asleep for a long time." He blinked, confusion clouding his gaze. His breathing quickened, his mind struggling to piece together fragments of memory. Clara quickly pressed the call button for the doctor, but didn't leave his side. "It's all right," she soothed. "You're safe. Just breathe, Mr. Reynolds. You're going to be okay." When the doctors rushed in moments later, Clara stepped back, her hands trembling. Yet even amidst the chaos, the flash of lights, the shuffling of feet, the questions from the medical team, Mr. Reynolds' eyes followed only her. As they checked his vitals and spoke in hurried tones, he whispered one last word before exhaustion overtook him again. "Clara." Her heart swelled. For the first time in months, the silent room had spoken back. And in that moment, Clara knew the miracle she had been waiting for had finally begun. The news of Mr. Reynolds' awakening spread through St. Mary's Hospital like wildfire. Doctors called it a medical miracle. The media wanted interviews, and his estranged relatives suddenly filled the waiting room with worried faces. But despite all the attention, Mr. Reynolds remained strangely distant from everyone. Everyone except Clara. From the moment he opened his eyes again, he seemed to seek her presence. Whenever another nurse came to take his vitals, he'd politely refuse. "I'll wait for Nurse Clara," he'd say, his voice weak but determined. The staff didn't argue. They all knew she had been his constant through the long months of silence. Clara was both humbled and nervous by his attachment. She spent her days tending to him, helping him relearn how to hold a spoon, how to sit up without trembling, how to take careful steps. Sometimes when she entered the room, she found him watching the window quietly, lost in thought. One afternoon, as the golden light streamed through the glass, Clara sat beside his bed, reading aloud the same book she had read to him while he slept. He smiled faintly. "You read that one often," he murmured. She blushed. "You remember?" He nodded slowly, his gaze distant. "I remember." "Your voice?" Her breath caught. He turned toward her, eyes glistening with something unspoken. "I could hear you, Clara, every word, every song. I just couldn't move, couldn't speak." His voice trembled with emotion. "I was trapped inside myself, aware of everything but unable to reach out. It was like being buried alive in silence." Clara's hand flew to her mouth. "You mean, all that time you could hear me?" "Yes," he whispered. "You talked about the weather, your brother, even how tired you were some nights. I remember it all. You don't know what that meant to me. When everything went dark, your voice became my light. It gave me something to hold on to, a reason not to let go." Tears blurred Clara's vision. She had always believed deep down that he might somehow hear her, but hearing it from him filled her with awe and disbelief. He reached out, his hand trembling, and brushed her fingers. "You didn't just take care of me, Clara," he said softly. "You saved me." The machines hummed quietly around them, but for the first time the silence between them was not empty. It was full of gratitude, unspoken understanding, and the fragile beginning of something that neither of them could quite name. Months had passed since that extraordinary night when Mr. Reynolds opened his eyes. The seasons had changed. The winter cold gave way to spring, and with it came color, life, and renewal, not only outside the hospital, but within the walls of St. Mary's too. Mr. Reynolds, now walking on his own, no longer looked like the fragile man who once lay still beneath the beeping machines. The spark in his eyes had returned, steady, warm, and alive. But his heart had changed in ways no one could see. Money and luxury had once defined him. Now, gratitude and humility did. Clara continued her rounds every day, though she no longer needed to check on him. Yet, sometimes, she'd find him waiting by the hospital garden, sitting quietly among the roses. "You still come to see the patients," he said one morning, smiling faintly, "even after all you've done?" She shrugged, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "It's my job. And besides, they need someone to talk to. Like you did." He chuckled softly, his voice warm. "You were more than a nurse, Clara. You were a voice in the dark. You gave me something no one else could. Hope." A few weeks later, Clara received an invitation to a small ceremony at the hospital. The card was simple, engraved with her name. Confused but curious, she attended. The lobby was filled with staff, doctors, and patients. A large white cloth hung over a plaque on the far wall. Mr. Reynolds stood at the podium, speaking with quiet pride. "There was a time I believed wealth could buy anything. Comfort, safety, even happiness. But then I learned the most precious thing in the world isn't something you can buy. He turned toward Clara, his eyes softening. It's compassion. He pulled the cloth away, revealing a shining new sign. Clara's Hope, rehabilitation wing for coma patients. Gasps and applause filled the room. Clara froze, her hand trembling against her heart. You named it after me? She whispered when he approached. He smiled and placed a small key in her hand, delicate, golden, with her name engraved on it. A new home, he said gently. Not a gift of money, but a thank you. You gave me life again, Clara. Let me return the favor. Tears spilled freely down her cheeks. She didn't care who saw. In that moment, surrounded by warmth and applause, Clara realized something profound. Miracles didn't always come in flashes of light or divine voices. Sometimes they began quietly, with kindness no one else saw, and a heart that refused to give up hope.